KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, reminding you can always get KIDO Talk Radio anywhere, online through our website or the KIDO Talk Radio app. No need to go through any third-party people. You just type in KIDO Talk Radio, and you can get the app, put it on your phone, whether it's Google, whether it's an Android, whether it's an Apple. You can take us anywhere. You get the stories, you get the streaming, you get the podcasts, you get special alerts. It's really great. Check that out today, KIDOTalkRadio.com, the app. Joining us now, the conservative lawmaker, Representative Kristi Zitto. Representative Zitto, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm living the dream. So here we are. Do you feel it? Is it almost over?
You never know. It's one of those situations that it's never over until it's over.
It's never over until, I guess, everybody says we'll be seeing you. So let's talk a little bit about a bill that you care passionately about. Now I believe in the state Senate, the bill that would allow people 18 to 21 to be able to conceal carry in cities. How difficult was it to get through the House? I know it passed the House with strong support, but getting it into committee, getting it heard, and now getting it to the Senate.
Well, oftentimes, Kevin, that's the challenge. You have a lot of support, and obviously we did for the bill because it's just such a common sense thing. As my co-sponsor, Julianne Young, said on the floor, it's an Idaho thing. It's a mashed potato situation. These young adults who are between the ages of 18 and 21 can carry open anywhere in the state, including the city limits. They can carry concealed anywhere in the state except the city limits. We had a challenge, of course, to get a hearing. That this year seems to be the challenge with most anything. And then we also, when we originated the bill would have read that you would be between the ages of 18 and over. And then we were also going to make it, rather than just a resident of Idaho being able to carry concealed in the city limits, you would be a legal resident or citizen of the United States. And I recently learned that we have other sections in our code that refer to different things that way as well. So next year I think we're going to do that. But, once we got it through committee and once we got it on the floor, there was a lot of support for it because it just makes sense. So, you're 18 years old, you're carrying open legally, you're in the park, it gets a little chilly, you throw your jacket on, and if your jacket happens to cover your firearm, your handgun, you're suddenly a criminal. And we want to avoid stuff like that, Kevin. We don't want to make situations where people inadvertently become criminals. And this bill will fix that. And it's just a great piece of legislation, and it's Idaho common sense.
Well, as someone who has been involved with the Second Amendment movement for quite some time in the state, are your fellow legislators getting it? Our great friend Greg Pruitt, when he started the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, he would go to cities, still does, and find municipalities breaking Idaho law when it comes to concealed carry, when it comes to guns and such, weapons. And initially, you and he and others were very frustrated, and we always used to make a joke of it, unfortunately, how gun-unfriendly Idaho seemed, counter to its reputation. Is it getting better in the state legislature session?
I think there's support. I think there's a lot of support for it. We want to maintain that, Kevin, but that we want to maintain all of our constitutional rights. And I think we need to be very, very, very careful. We sometimes see what's considered good legislation. Sometimes we call it feel-good legislation. It sounds like it will do a really good thing. It'll really take care and cover something. But then when you really dig into it and you really look at it and you examine what could be unintended consequences, sometimes it's not so good. And I think that sometimes legislators, we want to do the right thing. They want to protect the citizens, so to speak. And so at first blush, you hear things and you read things and you read legislation and you think, oh, okay, well, that's not a bad idea. But we need to really examine everything that we pass when it comes to our code and statute so that we don't create unintended consequences. There's a lot of support for the Second Amendment. Idaho is known as one of the most Second Amendment states in the country, and we just need to protect that. We need to protect that and make sure that it continues that way.
All right, let's get to some of the issues we may disagree on. Hemp, your thoughts on the Senate taking up the hemp bill? Many in the House almost unanimously said we're down with legalizing hemp in the state. You and I have talked about this before. Your thoughts on hemp and whether or not this is good for Idaho?
Well, I think the first and most important thing we need to be very, very clear on is hemp is not marijuana. They are of the same family. Now, I don't know if anyone's familiar with what a nightshade plant is, but it's a weed. It's a weed that we hoe out of the field, but it is a cousin to a tomato. It's a little green, tiny little tomatoey looking seed pod on it that you really wouldn't want to eat. It serves no purpose other than to be obnoxious. Now, maybe it has some herbal medicinal use somewhere clear down the thing. I don't know. But we consider it a noxious weed. Now, hemp and marijuana, they're just two different things. Hemp is an industrial plant. Hemp is one of the reasons, or one of the plants, one of the crops that were grown when the founders came to this country. Hemp, tobacco, and indigo. And, for example, Old Ironsides had 120,000 tons of hemp in its rigging and its sails, and that didn't include the hemp that was used to manufacture, to make the clothing of the sailors who actually operated the ship. So it has 26,000 different industrial uses, from paint to paper to oils to, it just goes, on and on and on. So I think it's really important, Kevin, to make that distinction that it's not the same thing. In fact, we've learned that the hemp plant itself, the pollinators of the hemp plant will travel a long, long ways. They're very, very fine. And they will actually interfere with the production of marijuana. And here not too long ago, I checked into the possibility of some greenhouses. Not that I was going to put a lot of them in or anything. I don't have those kind of resources, but I was just looking to see what a small greenhouse would cost. And I found that it's tough to get a greenhouse right now because states like California and Oregon and stuff, evidently, and I didn't know this, marijuana is produced best in a greenhouse situation to protect it from cross-pollination. Because if it cross-pollinates with the hemp plant, evidently it ruins the marijuana plant. So they're two different things. And it's the hemp production in the state of Idaho, it would be good for agriculture. It would be good for our state in general, not just our agriculture people, but it would be good for all of the different things that can be manufactured out of it.
Well, I think we're going to agree to disagree on that one. But not to spend.
Kevin, I'm not in favor of legalizing.
Well, can you see the point though that many of us have, that this is the road to legalization? You've got people that are going to try and put it on the ballot in 2020.
Oh, I'm not questioning that. I'm not saying, I'm not making a judgment call on that at all. I'm just looking at the commercial use, and it's just one more industry for our state.
Let's talk a little bit about.
I don't mean the marijuana. I mean the hemp.
I'm with you. State Representative Chrissy Zito with us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's talk a little bit about the repeal of the grocery tax. You and I have talked about this off the air for quite some time. It seemed like every politician pledged to do this when they were running for election and re-election, and yet it's gone nowhere in the legislature. Why?
I know, it's so disappointing. Now, Representative Giddings and Representative Nichols, they actually drafted a bill to repeal the grocery tax, and they couldn't get a hearing. And I don't know why, Kevin. I don't know whether it's being saved for an election year. I can't speak to why it did not get a hearing. It makes sense to me if we have money to spend on other things, the grocery tax repeal, and especially because, as you said, so many people promised to do it. So many people used it in their platform, so to speak, during the election. And that's one thing that consistently across the state you hear from people. Typically certain areas or certain regions of the state will, focus on this or focus on that or different issues. But the grocery tax repeal pretty much has been a statewide mandate from people all over our state. And Kevin, I don't even know what to say. I wish I knew what to say if it would have gotten a hearing. I'm not in Reverend Tax, but had it got to the floor, I would have supported it and voted for it. This is what the people want. And that is why we're supposed to be there.
Final thought for you this morning. The challenge of dealing with paying for Medicaid expansion. We've heard about work requirements. We've had people protesting. We've had people expressing their views counter to it. We still haven't figured out how we're going to pay for it. You're right in the lion's den there. What can you share with us?
Well, I can share with you that there's a bill that will have what are being termed sideboards. I don't think it's fair to anyone to just hand something out. Medicaid was set up and developed for a very specific set of people. People who really were in need of help. People, older people, maybe, pregnant moms who needed help, people who were disadvantaged in some way. And Kevin, I'm a firm believer in the saying that if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And I think we need to be very, very careful with these social programs. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believe that people, for not everybody, but to an extent, the Medicaid thing was a little bit misrepresented. I'm sure they're saying, well, we'll get 90% from the federal government. But Kevin, that's our money. We are the federal government. We are county government. We are state government. We are the people. And no matter where that money comes from, it's our money. And this bill that will come through, will have some work requirements and a few things like that. And I'm hoping that we can implement a few things like that. It doesn't hurt. And the bill that we have would make it so that there are some people who would be in the gap, who are in the gap or whatever, could still get insurance off of the, what's it called? Why can't I think of what it's called? Anyway, they for a very reasonable price could buy their own insurance through the exchange. And, this is another one of those things that sounds like a really good idea. It sounds like something that, but we have to be very, very careful of the unintended consequences, and we have to be very, very careful how we fund this, because we don't want to bankrupt our state. And then, Kevin, we don't want to take important services away from people who are already on Medicaid. We want to make sure that those who are able-bodied and can work don't have an incentive to not work, because I think I was pretty blessed in life. I had a friend who once said to me, they said, I love to work. I love the feeling of being out and being productive and accomplishing something in my day. And when we work, it gives us a sense of self-efficacy. It gives us a sense of fulfillment. And we don't want to incentivize people to not do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the legislation that, we're going to look at this week. And hopefully we can get it implemented and get this funding and the money figured out and make it work for everybody.
Well, Representative Zito, we appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you on the trail, and I'm sure you're anxious to get home.
Well, Kevin, I'm here to do the job until the job is done, and I am anxious to get home. I miss it, and that's okay. But I've been asked to do a job, and I'll be here, and I'll happily be here until it's done, until it's time to go home. And thank you for having me on today. I love being on your show, and, any time at all, just let me know.
Well, we love your content, so thank you, ma'am, and you have a great day.
You too, Kevin. Have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we have it. Representative Kristi Zito joining us. Coming up next, your thoughts. She says 2 representatives took it to the committee. They said, no hearing for the repeal of the grocery tax. Hemp looks like it'll happen in the Senate. Will the powers of law enforcement be enough to stymie the pro-hemp momentum? And should they stymie it? Remember, there is no test for hemp to determine the difference between hemp and marijuana here in the state of Idaho. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Plus this hour, Glenn and Sean, that's Glenn Beck, 9 to 12, Sean Hannity, 3 to 6 on KIDO Talk Radio, talk about the future of our country. All that coming up. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you. Coming up, Glenn and Sean discuss the fate, the future of the Republic. First, your phone calls on the issues that matter to you. Liberty Linda. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Kevin, I was listening to Sean Hannity last night. He had a liberal guest there, and she was just talking over Sean Hannity and wouldn't give him a straight answer to any one of his questions. Kevin, when are these liberals going to stop doing this?
That's why we call them the DLL, the devious little libs.
We see it everywhere. She was so rude to Sean Hannity, and we could see this over and over again. When a conservative starts talking, they, a liberal, will continue speaking over the conservatives so they cannot get their message out. It's on every station. I mean, don't you notice it?
Well, I do. And when I used to do national television, that's what we would fight against. And what you have to do is you have to keep talking. It sounds like, well, a garbled mess, but at least you get your words in, and basically you try and jam them like they're trying to jam you.
It's so rude. When are they going to realize that? I don't think it's helping them. Anyway.
Well, but they have that, and you see the liberal hosts, what they do is they want to make sure that people don't get the truth out. They want to make sure that their agenda, which is the liberalization, the socialization of America, continues.
But unfortunately, our young kids don't see that. They're picking up their message, the liberal message, and they don't hear truth, unfortunately. Anyway, I was so upset last night. Sean Hannity was so kind to his guests. He's just great. What can we say? He's a great interviewer, gives people time, and he said nothing. He was very kind to his guests. But so anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because it's astounding to see it over and over and over again. And I wanted to make a remark about reformation to individuals brought here from another country. The United States did not have anything to do with bringing them to this country. However, England did. A few at the top of their government did it to destroy our country. However, that did not happen. Instead, Kevin, we had a war so that all would have freedom, and there were thousands or millions of Americans that were killed in that war to give freedom to all.
Exactly. Liberty Linda, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kevin, and looking forward to the rest of your show.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Traffic and weather together.
News Channel 7's Eric Everett.
And coming up, Glenn and Sean. We'll hear from them next with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Rolling right along. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, Glenn and Sean talk about the fate of the Republic. Don't forget, after Glenn Beck, it's Dave Ramsey, Sean Hannity, and Lars Larson. And in this it's a clip from the Sean Hannity Show. Remember, the radio version is here, weeknights on KIDO Talk Radio. You can also catch him on the Fox News channel. And Sean had Glenn on. And I always love to share with you their kind of crosstalk. So we'll have that coming up after we go to our great friend, again, from Fox News Radio's Jeff Manasso in Chicago, home of the Rolling Stones in June, from what we understand, our sources tell us. Good morning, Jeff.
Going to be a big show. Big show, my friend.
Big show indeed. Of course, unfortunately, a lot of massive flooding going on throughout the great breadbasket, the heartland of America, the Midwest, sir.
Yeah, in billions of dollars in damage. Just the Farm Bureau in Nebraska alone is saying that ranch losses and livestock losses could top $1 billion from flooding. In part, one of the major culprits there is the Missouri River, bordering Iowa there, right across from Omaha, Nebraska, and you're seeing small towns literally underwater from all this rapid snow melt and building up of ice jams that are flowing down the river. That's basically level or over bridge decks, and so it's got nowhere to go. It's got to go left or it's got to go right into homes and livelihoods and businesses, and it's flooding that people in the region say that they just never seen before in generations. Vice President Mike Pence touring the damage in the region yesterday, promising that federal aid is coming to these areas, but it's a mess across many states where emergencies are declared. Up in Wisconsin, the Dakotas, massive flooding up there along the Red River and other waterways. I-29 from Omaha down to St. Joseph, Missouri, shut down. Many roads and highways are shut down. About 50% of the roads in one county in Wisconsin shut down. 41 of Iowa's 99 counties spanning the three corners of the state have declared emergency declarations. 8 of those counties along the Missouri River. So it's water that it's built up too fast with the rapid snow melt and this bomb cyclone that, as you know, brought massive amounts of snow to the Rockies, and then with the warmer temps, it was rain here, and it was just too much for these rivers to handle.
Indeed, of course, people are looking for help and getting ready for the growing season. Wow.
Yeah. So the farmers they predict, because of this flooding, that it's going to be late crop season. It's going to be really late to be able to put their crops in. So they're already calling it a loss. We've got numbers coming out in parts of Nebraska and Iowa on livestock loss, farms that are underwater, and so it's not a good thing. So any help that these folks can get certainly is needed. And you've got towns and communities that have boil water advisories because water treatment facilities are underwater. There's an air base near Omaha that has come underwater as well. So a lot of water, and it can't go away fast enough.
Jeff Manasseh, we'll find out whether or not you're going to the Rolling Stones. Thank you for the report, sir.
You bet.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, the home of Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity. Last night on the Fox News channel, they had a chance to discuss a few issues. If you missed it, let's hear what they have to say about what Donald Trump is up against and the future of our great country.
No, I know. I appreciate it. One of the things that you talked a lot about was the dangers of radicalism and the dangers of socialism. I've never seen the threat this bad. 100 people agree with the new Green Deal in the Democratic Party. Many of the 2020 candidates agree with it and are campaigning on it. And I thought maybe it's time to go back and revisit some of those things you talked about and I talked about at the time.
Sean, I distinctly remember every day the last year of my Fox show, I said what was coming. And the last few steps were that the radicals, the anarchists, the Islamists, the socialists would all gather together. They would not be working together, plotting together, but they would see the opportunity and they would all come together and work to destabilize Europe and America. And that is exactly what is happening. You have CARE now in the halls of Congress all the time, and I think that's who Nancy Pelosi was afraid of when they changed the anti-Semitism
about them being
rebuke last
unindicted
week.
co-conspirators when you talk about, I don't think people may not remember.
No, I'll go I'll go a step further. They weren't just unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation. They were started, and the people that were in Omar's office last week or 2 weeks ago during that vote and instrumental in changing were actually from the Palestinian, I think it's Palestinian Council, which was started by the Muslim Brotherhood. They have a direct sister, which is Hamas. So you have the Palestinian Council, you have Hamas over here, they're sister organizations, and the Palestinian Council needed a PR firm, if you will, for propaganda here in the United States, and that's why CAIR was started. And it's all very well documented. That's who we have in. You also now have the Democratic Socialist, and you remember this, Sean. If you said anyone was a Democratic Socialist, you were called a racist. Well, race doesn't seem to be playing a role with socialists. It seems, as Newsweek said when I first said this on Fox, and now the New York Times Magazine has said this, we're all socialists now. When did everyone become a socialist? Well, they've always been socialist. I talked to Joe Lieberman earlier today on radio. Joe is, you know Joe Lieberman, and I'm sure you respect him as much as I do. I don't necessarily... Yes, me too. I don't necessarily... Right. I don't agree with him politically a lot of the times, but he's a decent, honorable man. And I asked him this question. You know, if you look at what happened with Beto, you look at what is happening with Ocasio-Cortez, and I don't know if you've seen the video by a new guy called Mr. Reagan online, but he did an expose on Cortez that's a little frightening on what's happening behind the scenes. When I talked to Joe Lieberman, I said, look, Joe, I'm not talking about the people in Washington. I'm talking about the Democratic neighbor that I get along with right down the street. They don't believe in infanticide. They don't believe in destroying the free market system. They don't believe in all of the stuff that is coming out of the mouths of these radicals. What's going to shake them? When are we going to have our Labour Party movement where you have that in England that the Socialist Party has noticed, wow, it looks like we're just full with radicals and anti-Semites, and members of the Labour Party in England are leaving the party saying, this is too radical for me. When are the average people going to leave the Democratic Party or at least wake up?
Let me ask this follow-up. I don't want to interrupt your thought. I'm just for the constraints of time because I'm listening to everything you're saying.
Let me just finish what he's.
Okay, go ahead. Finish.
Okay, let me just finish with what he just said was Glenn. He said the people that he knows that are in the Democratic Party are too afraid of the mob, and that's exactly what this cult, this cult of death, I think, is stirring up, this mob that will shut you down unless you agree with absolutely everything. And we lose the country if good, decent people don't stand up on both sides.
I never thought I'd hear anyone advocate for, well, the baby will deliver the baby, and then the baby will be made comfortable, and then the mother will decide if the baby gets resuscitated, if it has trouble breathing, or even during dilation that could happen. But I never thought anyone proposed getting rid of oil, gas, cars, planes, and cows. But it's happened. My question is, in the last 30 seconds, what's the antidote? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Waking up, and I don't know if there's an antidote, but I will tell you this. If the Republicans don't win in this next election, I think we are officially at the end of the country as we know it. We may not survive even if we win, but we definitely don't if the Democrats or Republicans lose with Donald Trump.
Does that mean the re-election of Trump, and people that maybe didn't like him, now they can see he kept a lot of his promises, most of them?
Well, I know I did. I saw that he kept his promises, and I will tell you, there is no choice this time around. We must come together.
There we have it. Glenn Beck with Sean Hannity. Glenn Beck 9 to 12, Sean Hannity 3 to 6. And Glenn Beck very chilling, saying that if the Republicans don't win, we're done. Every election, the most important election, everything matters. That's why the re-election of Donald Trump has to happen. Love to get your thoughts on it. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I'll share mine with you. But back to what Glenn said at the end. And Sean was right. Remember how people criticized Glenn Beck and they replaced him with The Five, which, it's a good show. But Glenn Beck was on a mission. And Glenn Beck, when he was on the Fox News channel, talked about the caliphate that happened. Glenn Beck hit too close to home, so he had to go. But whether you like Glenn Beck or not, he was right about all this stuff. Now, again, like every talk show host, like Kevin Miller, there are some things I agree with Glenn on, some things I don't. But you can't take that away from him. He was right on the caliphate, on the socialism. But the idea that if the Republicans don't win, we're in a heap of trouble. I agree with that statement. What do you think? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And rolling right along, back to what Glenn Beck said, very chilling with Sean Hannity on KIDO Talk Radio.
What's the antidote? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Waking up, and I don't know if there's an antidote, but I will tell you this. If the Republicans don't win in this next election, I think we are officially at the end of the country as we know it. We may not survive even if we win, but we definitely don't if the Democrats or Republicans lose with Donald Trump.
Does that mean the re-election of Trump, and people that maybe didn't like him, now they can see he kept a lot of his promises, most of them?
I think he's talking to you, Glenn.
Well, I know I did. I saw that he kept his promises, and I will tell you, there is no choice this time around. We must come together.
There we have it. Glenn Beck with Sean Hannity, weekdays 9 to 12 and 3 to 6, right after, in the middle of Dave Ramsey's, in the middle of them. So there we have it, the end of the country as we know it. We see it already with the Green New Deal, banning cows, infanticide, and other issues that we have to take on. We have to take them on here in Idaho. It's crazy when you think of the presidential election already being talked about and people saying, well, Wisconsin is the bellwether. Well, Wisconsin's the home of those crazy, wacky libs in Madison. And it's funny when people say that Wisconsin is the bellwether. It used to be Ohio, used to be Florida. Then we take a look at how good we have it here. Yes, we complain about the Republicans and we complain about the devious little libs, but the libs don't have the control. Now they're trying through state ballot initiatives, through big money outside influences coming into the state, spending big money, perpetrating myths, and then the legislature having to deal with it. But comparatively speaking to the rest of the country, we've got it really good. By the way, a shout out once again to law enforcement. We don't, and thankfully, we don't really realize how dangerous a job law enforcement is. And sometimes it gets common to hear about high-speed chases. What was it just a day or two ago? A 13-year-old was in a car on a high-speed chase. Finally, I think he called his mom or his mom called him, and they arrested him. He pulled over, and then there was another high-speed chase where you have to pull out the spikes and everything else and people firing on it. I can remember when we used to joke about bank robberies because of the Great Recession, and the lead story was putting in a new crosswalk. Unfortunately, with so many people coming to the Treasure Valley, with so many issues happening here, violent crime continues to rise. We're hearing details. Remember the story of the woman who was allegedly she wasn't allegedly, she was walking around and shot in the middle of Caldwell. Well, now we have some background to that. Now we have an issue where you have 4 people arrested in connection with a stabbing in the foothills. And now we have also the top story. You remember Timmy Kenner, the man accused of stabbing the 3-year-old to death and injuring others, that is unfit for the death penalty because he's incompetent to stand trial for it? Well, the judge in the case did something right. Thank you, Judge. Denied his attempt to get his name changed to Eternal Love. How bleeping insulting. You have a man who many eyewitnesses saw commit these horrific crimes on a 3-year-old little girl, had the audacity through the public defender system that we fund to want to change his name to Eternal Love. There is nothing eternal, there is nothing lovely about Mr. Kenner, right? But it underscores the danger that we all face and the dangers that peace officers face throughout the Treasure Valley, whether you're Ontario to Mountain Home. And then we have this incident where 4 people have been arrested in connection with a stabbing in the foothills. So how about this? And this is why the solution that we've come up with is you carry a gun wherever you go. Now, many people are uncomfortable with that, but you want to have a fighting chance, you go with Smith & Wesson, like Clint Eastwood used to. Case in point, 3 men and a woman who beat and stabbed a 20-year-old late Saturday night somewhere along Sunset Peak Road in the Boise foothills are in custody. Now, the suspects range in age from 30 to 21. They're charged with aggravated battery in connection with the case. Now, you throw in what happened with Kuna, where you have the 3 young men accused of sexually assaulting, gang raping the victim, and you know that times are changing here in the Treasure Valley. The woman, apparently, I guess, out for a walk or whatever, was attacked and is currently hospitalized and is being treated for serious injuries as the result of the attack. Think about this. Here you are, you're walking around the foothills, and these, 4 thugs come up and attack you. That's why you got to have a gun, I think. So deputies began their investigation and arrested these folks. The victim has multiple and visible injuries. According to the victim, 3 men and a woman beat her, stabbed her with a knife and a broken bottle, and then left her off the side of the road on Sunset Peak Road while they drove away. Thankfully, Boise Police, Ada County paramedics responded immediately. They took her to a hospital and treated her for potentially life-threatening injuries. I don't say this to scare you, friends, but the tide seems to be turning, where you have these violent malcontents coming in trying to victimize people here in the Treasure Valley. What do? Well, very simply, I think you have to protect yourself. You know, we've been doing this for years. We need to do it better. Thanking local law enforcement, thanking families of law enforcement. They're the ones that have to deal with these cretins. Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning. And I'm Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. So, when we talk about how dangerous it is to be a law enforcement officer, sometimes these folks, unfortunately, pay for their jobs, pay for their service, pay to protect us with their lives. Here's our own Tanya J. Powers, KIDO Talk Radio.
The Kittitas Sheriff's deputy was trying to stop a vehicle last night when the driver sped up, starting a pursuit. When the vehicle came to a stop, the driver got out and started firing at the deputy, as well as a police officer who had also responded to that call. Kittitas Sheriff's officials say the deputy was shot to death, and the officer, who was also shot, was airlifted to a Seattle hospital. The driver was shot as well and treated at a different hospital. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Thank you, Tanya J. Powers. Here you are, working the late night shift. You pull somebody over, a high-speed chase. A fellow officer helps you, and this lunatic doesn't want to be given a speeding ticket. Or maybe he's a drug dealer. Maybe he's a narco-terrorist. Maybe he's just a nut. This is what these folks face. And remember, we used to say, thank goodness we don't have to face this here in Idaho. Well, unfortunately, it's happening. And is there anything that we can do about it? Yes, there is. We can support local law enforcement. We can go to some of their charitable events. We can see them and say, hey, thank you, officer, for doing what you do. Thank you for keeping us safe, and may God bless you and your family. And pray for them, right? It all starts with prayer, folks. Kevin Miller, good morning.